So we got myself, Jane, Carlton, Harry, Steve. Who is on, it shows iPhone. Barbara, is that you? Don't know. Okay. We'll figure it out.
Sorry, that was me. I was putting my name in.
Oh, okay. I thought it was you on the
Okay.
iPhone. Just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure.
Does it list me as me now?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, let's see. Where am I? Hold on 1 second. I don't know. Okay, call the meeting to order at 6:32, Josh. Okay, first thing on the agenda, which I don't know what I just did with my agenda, but hold on 1 second. I just had it. Here we go. Okay, first thing, any public comments? We're trying something different this month. We're doing public comments at the beginning and at the end of the meeting.
Nina, you need to read the, before we start, you need to read the disclaimer.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Carlton, thanks for the reminder, but you're real soft when you're talking.
I can fix that.
Okay. I know you can talk louder.
Yeah,
Okay. Just our disclaimer for the Zoom meetings. This meeting will be recorded and may be live. All attendees are muted upon entry. The host will unmute guests during the presentation, hearing or citizens' comment agenda item. Questions during the meeting can be submitted in the chat area to be addressed by the chair. Attendees not adhering to the guidelines. Hold on. Attendees, sorry about that. Attendees not adhering to the guidelines may be put on hold or removed by the host. Okay. I always forget that. Okay, first thing, any public comments? Okay, hearing none. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve. We can do February 24th first. There's one thing, Josh, under review of financial reports where it says motion to approve the budget, that the third line down for the interest revenue should be 3,000, not 300,000.
Yep.
Then that doesn't, I hate to say it, but that doesn't balance out because you had, if the 700 and the 125,000 have to add up to 878,000. So I'd like to, I've studied it and I just realized it's 53,000 and I know we didn't get 53,000 in interest. So I think let's hold off this one so we can figure out what the right language is, if you don't mind. Did you hear me?
Yep, I heard you.
I'm waiting for Gina. She's muted.
I'm sorry, my phone was ringing, so I unmuted. I muted myself. I have that budget that we worked off of, and it does add up to that 878,000.
So could you read the numbers that were included? 700 for?
Yep, the CPA surcharge of 2% was 700,000. The state match was 175,000, and the interest income was 3,000.
Okay, so the 125. So I would ask that we, I move to accept the minutes with some amendments to be made.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second, Harry.
Okay.
So the amendment that I'm offering is that the 125,000 of state revenue needs to be changed to 175,000. And the interest needs to change to 3,000.
Okay. I think that was it. Let me just do a quick. Okay. I had looked at the sheet, Carlton, but I didn't catch the 175, 125. I was making sure the other added up right. Okay, that's all I can see. So any discussion? Okay, all in favor of Carlton's motion to accept the minutes with the changes that he suggested. All in favor, roll call, Josh?
Gina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Aye.
Harry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Bill, Bill, you're muted.
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, great, thank you. Moving on to March 24th.
Motion to accept.
Second, Steve.
Okay, discussion. I just have something, the minutes are fine, but we could probably elaborate on the public hearing part. The time that it started and roughly the time that it ended. I can't remember exactly what time. Actually, it says 8:25. That was a long public hearing. It was a very good one too, by the way. But if we could, Josh, if you could amend those just to show that it started right away, so it started at like 6:31. That it was opened, and maybe just add in, I think we had roughly 40 people, and that included us. I think there were 9 of us altogether. So I would say 30 plus people, because we had some people coming on. Is that what everybody else remembers for a count? Roughly? Okay.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, about that amount.
Okay, good. I was trying to keep track of it, who attended, but the participant list jumps around and people came on and people went off, and so it's hard to follow for that.
One more question on that. Josh, do you have the link where it's posted to YouTube, the hearing?
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to offer, because there was quite a few people and questions and everything. I can definitely include that link in the minutes.
Please make it so.
Okay, great. That's a good point, because it was a excellent public hearing. As all our meetings are, in my opinion, but it was an excellent public hearing, and to have the link out there, it would be helpful for folks. And I've been known to look back at the recordings too, if I can't remember something for sure. So that would be great. So I guess Carlton, can I offer a friendly amendment to accept it just for those additions under the public hearing?
Very good. Yes.
And I'll second that.
Okay.
Steve.
I actually have one question too. Under pickleball courts, it says, never mind. I just reread it and it's fine. Forget that. Okay, vote on accepting the minutes with update that Josh is going to do. Roll call.
Gina,
Josh, yeah, yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, great. Oops, what's that? I have too many papers here all of a sudden. Okay, the April 1st meeting. That was a short and sweet. The minutes. Motion to approve or any changes?
So moved.
Okay, that was the Carlton motion. Do we have a second? Second to approve the April
Second.
1st.
I'll second.
Okay, Jane with a second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, Josh?
Gina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Steve,
I should have abstained because I wasn't there.
Bill,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, great, thank you. Next we have financial updates. And I did send them out late last night. Really, nothing has changed since last month, except for possibly more revenue, but everything else is about the same. And when we set our budget, we had talked about paying off the debt service for, I think
Keith
Keith
Homestead.
Homestead. What was that?
Oh, no, sorry. That was just for the Keith Homestead, right?
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
I talked to Tony Salmonte, the finance director, and he explained that it, for what we would save, would be minimal compared to the cost of rebonding, and going out and doing like all the original, like recalling bonding that's there, rebonding. It wouldn't be saved much over the course of the years. So he recommended not paying it off.
What do you
Plus you
mean,
hit,
what do you
Jean?
mean rebonding?
that's a
Just
good
curious.
question. That's a good question, because if we pay it off,
The bond may not have a provision that allows you to pay it off early.
right, and I think that's part of it too.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then it's moot. I wish the finance director was on today because I've got other questions. Because it looks to me like we're going to have, based on this information, and the fourth quarter tax money is not in here, but when you look at the revenue to budget actual, we're running $887,000 ahead of the projected budget for the FY21. So that means that we're going to have money to distribute later on. But at the same time, we're running about, I don't know, 76,000 behind in terms of fourth quarter revenue surcharge. So those may, my point is that we're going to have at least 87,000 and another potential 70 or so thousand. So about $150,000 of excess budget at the end of this year. And we'll know that sometime in probably hopefully July or August. But I think we were very conservative in our budget this last year.
I did talk to Tony the other day about, I'm not sure how many of you get the coalition newsletter about the increased monies coming back to the town, which was a lot more than what he estimated as income from the state, revenue from the state. Carlton had brought up the point of if we should increase the what we set aside for the 10%, if we should put more in. I did talk to Tony on that. I thought myself it was too late with the council had already seen the budget and done their first look at it, referred it to the finance and budget and finance committees. Tony had said it wasn't. I thought it was too late because it was already had gone through the council like for the first part. He said it could still be changed, but if we left it how it was and it goes into the undesignated, in that case, we could always coming up like in December or whenever, we could move money to those funds.
So
Is that
that's-
your,
Are you speaking to the budget for the FY 22?
yes,
Yeah, yeah, the state DOR indicates that if mid-year you find out that you're running well ahead on revenues, you can reopen that budget and redirect the budget.
Mhm.
And right now, I think it is not too late to get a change in for the 2022 budget because they haven't voted it and it's a hearing coming up. And I'm going to recommend that we increase it to 200,000 for the state revenues because the expectation is 203,000 based on DRR recommendation. They say take 32.3% of your estimated revenue to come in, and that's what you can put in the budget. And I think it's better for us to get it into the budget this year. That basically increases each of the 10% brackets and the 5% increases it slightly. And I think the administrative budget needs to be increased regardless. So, but we can only do it through changing the total anticipated revenue.
Okay, so what is it you're proposing? It's 700,000 right now. Oh, that's the surcharge. You're looking to increase the state match, right?
For FY 22,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking to increase the state match estimate to 200,000. I think
Okay.
you just said it was 175.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we can increase that total revenue to over 900,000.
Okay, do you remember, Carlton, what the state projected according to Stewart's?
20%, I believe, right?
No.
20.
The estimate for Bridgewater and the state estimate is anybody that has less than 3% surcharge. The OR has indicated officially that the town should use 32.3% as the anticipated state match. And that, based on the revenues that the town provided us, and you sum all those up, that increases that number. And I had those calculations here. Let me find it.
Because we have a lot more coming back from the state that's in fiscal 22 also, correct?
That the end of fiscal 21, we will have money to reallocate into the grants.
Okay,
For the next year budget, the FY 22 budget, we can increase the estimate a little
Mhm.
bit. And I honestly had it all worked out, and now I know. Just bear with me for a second.
okay,
I think we can increase the anticipated revenue to 953,000. And then, because we're going to increase the to 200K. Yeah, we have to do it at this meeting, or we just told her whatever it's easiest for all of us to comprehend. But basically, my calculation said that we should increase the state match to 200,000, a
Mhm.
total of $953,000 of anticipated revenue. And what that would mean is that each of the 10% categories would increase to $95,300, and the admin account would increase to $47,650. And we can submit that revision to the accountants and the town.
Right. Right, that's what he was saying. It wasn't too late. As I said, I was thinking because it was already submitted and got to the council, but he said it wasn't. So
Right.
it could still be changed.
They're having a public hearing very soon on it. So I think it behooves us to increase it just because I'm worried about the admin account, quite frankly. There's a lot of stuff.
Okay, Carlton, you said 953,000. I get 903,000. Did I miss something? We're keeping the 700,000 from the surcharge. We're increasing the state match to 200,000, and the interest would be the same. Did I miss something?
No, that's correct. And I had the wrong numbers because of the numbers were wrong in our minutes, and that's what I was.
Oh,
making.
okay, got
So
it.
I guess I'm going to suggest we leave it as is right now and just understand that we probably have more money next year than we had anticipated.
Okay, so you don't want to submit you're not recommending to submit a change now?
It's up to the committee.
I just
Okay,
I got a quick question, if you don't mind me, I just
No,
really quick.
sure.
So that 200,000, what,
Mhm.
that's at our current levels, it's not 200,000, it's less than that for the state match, correct?
The estimated state match for next year in November, the distribution in November, the state is estimating that we would receive $203,000.
From the state,
The state match, correct.
yeah.
And
Okay,
in addition, we'll have the revenue from the town, which we estimated low at 700 or approximately right. So that makes it what it's 200 plus 700 is 903,000, and then we add the interest on top of that. So that makes it about an estimate of $906,000 of revenue.
okay, and then the interest is the state interest rate at 6.25%.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the interest that we're getting for the money being put in the bank or invested, however they do it.
right. And
Oh, right. Okay.
if you look at the revenue to budget section, it says earnings on investment, and it shows 7,000 was anticipated, and we've actually seen to date of March 31st, 1,600. So 3,000 is a nice medium. But
Okay.
personally, I think we can leave it alone because I had worked with the wrong numbers from the minutes.
Okay, any other thoughts from the committee on leaving it as we submitted and probably through the year? If we decide to move money, we can, or do you want to readjust now?
I'd like
Thoughts?
to readjust now because the housing market is going crazy. So we got a low figure in there, and I think it's going to come in higher. So I think we should readjust it now while we can.
Okay, so we can change. Let me just quickly flip back. So if we take 10% of the 903,000 is 10%,
90,000.
right?
90,000.
How much was it? 90,000 and what?
90,300.
300, yeah.
90,300. So we can do that for the 3 pots. And what is 5% for admin?
Right. So have 90,000. Let me calculate it here.
45,150.
It should be 90,300 divided by 2. Oops. 90,000. I'm trying to multiply it. That's the wrong thing to do.
45,150.
Correct.
Okay. Other thoughts from the rest of the committee? Harry thinks we should increase it now. Other thoughts?
I'll agree with Harry on that. Since we can get it done now.
I agree too.
I feel like we should adjust it at this time as well.
Did
Okay.
we move Jennifer Golston out of our admin line, or does did the town pay her?
She comes from our admin,
Uh-huh.
but unfortunately, this is like the last month we'll be paying Jen.
Right, that's what I know. So are we going to?
Right, so it would
replace
come
her?
from admin.
Well, are we going to replace her, and do we anticipate costs for her replacement? And when will that be? Because that will be a
Can we-
savings.
Yeah, we're gonna touch on that a little further. But yeah, that would be considered in the admin budget for any consulting.
Okay.
So let me try to do a motion here. I would move that the total revenue estimate be $903,000, consisting of $700,000 from town revenue,
Mm-hmm.
$200,000 from state match funds, and $3,000 from interest on our account.
Mm-hmm.
Further, to provide to each of the three required reserve accounts 10%, that 10% being $90,300, and 5% to the administrative account, that amount being $45,150.
For the budget of 2022.
That is
Correct.
for FY22.
Yeah.
Right. So it'd be a vote to amend what we submitted previously to change, amend it to these figures.
It's a new motion.
Okay. I'm sorry, Carlton.
It's a new motion. I need a second.
Okay. we need a s-
Harry seconded.
Can we
Okay.
discuss this? How did we go in our administrative line from 25 to 47,000?
That's
That was
not
the
total-
previous.
That's not the total administrative line.
Oh, it isn't?
No.
No, we're looking at the projected budget bill that was submitted that the finance director gave us to work off of.
Yeah.
I think we had
Well-
sent it out last month.
So Bill, you're looking at the expenses to budget actual. And if you look at part-time wages, administrative expenses, administrative expenses down at the line, 57,000, and administrative expenses, you'll see that there's 3,000, 3,500, 25,000 and 2,000 budgeted. Those should come up to what we proposed last year.
Okay, okay. I see now. Thank you for the
They
clarification.
split it up in different ways and then don't roll it up in a convenient manner.
Okay.
Mhm.
So
Okay, sounds good. We had, who was the second on that? Did we
Harry.
have a second?
Harry,
I did. Harry.
Okay, Harry. Okay, any further discussion?
Is that the only amounts that we need to adjust
Yeah,
at this time?
just straight budgeting.
Right, so we don't have to change what we put into the, what did we call that special account? So we could spend it, I think we should be set with that.
Yeah, the special account we can leave alone for now.
Right, it was, what did we call that? Budgetary reserves. Okay, we also had taken 10%, looking back at the April 1st meeting, we had taken 10% from the CPC budget and put it into the budgetary reserves. Do we want to increase that as well?
I'm not sure. I don't know what the budgetary reserve is because the total estimate is 903,000.
Right, the budgetary reserve, we had voted this at the April meeting. What it is, the undesignated, we can't spend until the budget is I think certified is the proper term. If it's in that reserve, we can spend it like July or August before the budget's certified.
Well, the motion would, I'd friendly amend it to say, with any remaining funds going to the undesignated reserve. I think that means it's probably something like at the end of the year type stuff. And I think I would rather just leave it at this as is without adding that term.
Okay,
That's my personal preference.
Is the budget usually certified fairly quickly at the same time? It's not like the state budget that drags on for 5 months.
it's usually, I think Tony told me it's usually like the end of August. If I remember back to our conversation last month, my conversation with him, it's usually around the end of August sometime that it's certified. Carlton, do you know different?
No, that's correct. the budget is finally reconciled. The FY21 budget will be fully reconciled. Typically, it was October, but they've been able to move it up into the August timeframe. So when that reconciliation comes in, that's when budgets get reallocated at that point. We're only
Okay.
talking here about the FY22 budget that is to be set.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Okay, so we're fine with not changing to put 10% into, I think it's 5%, 10%. I'm reading back to what we motioned in April.
I just ignore that one.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that was something we needed to do to get the budget submitted, but we're not going to change that. The motion is just to change
This is a new motion. It
the
supersedes
funds.
that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay,
No.
Josh, who, I interrupted somebody. Who was that?
Oh, I
Kevin,
just said no, though. I just didn't have anything to add.
Oh,
Sorry. Me too.
okay.
I'm gonna mute
Okay.
myself now. All right.
Okay, no, it's hard with the Zoom to, I'm not sure if I'm interrupting people or not interrupting. If I do, I sincerely apologize. Okay, Josh, roll call?
Tina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the financial reports that were sent out? Actually, like I said, not much has changed since the last one, couple of payments made. And that
Have
was,
you had any conversation to find out when the, excuse me, the Calwayne School purchase and sales will be signed and therefore and when they will start tapping the CPC money? Do you have any idea?
I haven't, but I can look into that.
I would like to get a better handle on it. Well, I've heard it's supposed to be in the next 6 weeks or so, but I'd like to know when they're going to start tapping this.
Okay,
The appropriation's been made, so it's just sitting there waiting to be accessed.
okay. Yep, I thought I just spelled McKelway wrong.
I do have a question about that. I came into
Sure.
that whole process very late, when most of the decisions had already been made. Is a developer who will actually own the property? The town
The
The developer.
develops what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
purchase and sales basically says that the developer will pay the town $650,000 for the building and grounds.
Uh-huh.
And then, so that helps them with their financing. And then they spent 2 years getting historical credits because we put it on the historic
Registry.
thank you.
Yeah.
And several other housing money, et cetera. So it will be privately owned land and it will come into the tax base as privately owned land. And they will probably construct and break ground probably within weeks of signing the PNS.
All right.
Mhm. Okay, other questions for the financial end? I will check into that, Carlton, to see when they'll start tapping the money.
Thank you.
Okay, if no other questions, moving on to old business, Central Square Congregational Church. If that ever comes off our agenda, I'm gonna feel lost because it's just like always there.
Yeah.
It's been there for a year.
It's
Well,
It's-
hopefully we can
I
move it
feel
to
the same way when I have to come to all the CPC meetings every week, plus
Well,
my own at the
I hope you
church.
still come after.
Well, hopefully we can move it to the liaison reports next meeting.
Yep,
You mean
Yep.
Barbara's not a member of our committee?
I think she is, and I think Gordon and Terry are too.
Yeah.
They're just like smiling faces all the time.
I think we're
the-
joined at the, I think we're joined at the hip at this point.
Yep, Okay,
whatever it takes.
we received the draft deed restriction from Brian Pfeiffer. through Barbara. It needs to be reviewed by town council. There are a couple questions for either the town council, I say town council, town attorney. So it's ingrained in me, town council, but the town attorney needs to review it. There's a couple questions there, 2 or 3 questions that either he can answer or the town manager. They also have the grant agreement that has been sent to them and they're reviewing that. So hopefully that'll be done soon. And I believe the church has sent it off to their attorney too, or hired an attorney for it.
No, we have not.
You haven't.
No,
Point of
we
order.
have not. We're waiting to hear if we're in agreement with everything when it comes back. With the way it's written now, we're okay with it.
Okay,
But we want to hear if any changes are made by either town council or Attorney Rollins.
mhm,
And then we'll decide if we should have it reviewed by the church attorney. But we're good with the way it's written right now.
okay, good, thank
So,
you.
Can I clarify? I didn't hear or didn't understand something. So the grant agreement has been sent to our town attorney and the church for review. Is that correct?
The grant agreement hasn't been sent to the church. It was just sent to Jennifer Burke to pass on.
That's,
And-
that's what I was trying to clarify. So what we have received is the deed draft, working draft deed restriction that I have reviewed, the town attorney is supposed to review. We have provided some information that Brian requested. For example, he needed to get an original deed. And we were able to find that. Bob Wood was able to find that, thankfully.
Right.
And I think there's a couple of other meets and bounds documents that I've sent out. So-
Brian is going to use 2 of the deeds that were sent to him. He thinks both of them will be agreeable when he sends it off to the Mass Historical Commission.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And he said to thank Carlton for sending these, finding them through Bob Wood and to send to him. Very
Well,
useful.
Right,
Tell
right,
him he's
just a
supposed to
little
help you.
background for that, for the rest of the committee. Brian needs to have to submit to the Mass Historical. I hope I
Yep.
got that, the right
Yeah.
one. He needs to have original deeds. The church has one hanging on their wall. He wasn't sure if he could take that, plus the deed showed different than what it is now. So we thought it was just Church Street, the difference, but needing to know when it changed and how it changed. So Carlton reached out to Bob Wood, who's like the be all for deeds around town, old deeds. Bob just happened to have the old deed, which he gave to Carlton, and Carlton passed on. So
Right here.
yeah, Bob had it. It was like amazing. If anybody wants to see it, we can share it, but it was just
Was it-
amazing what it
Was it like really, was it really old and like cool looking?
1837, something like that.
Yeah, I had a hard time reading it because of the handwriting.
It's from
It's
1837, you said?
Yeah.
I think that's the date on it. I'm not sure.
Could probably find it on the digital copy of it.
Yes, that's why we got it. He
Yep.
got it from the Registry of Deeds. He
Excellent.
has ways. I can go get them, and they're stamped with a draft or not an official. So
Mhm.
Bob has an access to get a clean copy, and that's what he has. He has all the deeds for the town common.
Yep, that's neat. Jen, did you see it? Did Carlton forward to you?
I don't know. Maybe you did, Carlton. I didn't see it, but
Let me ask you
yeah,
a
that's
different one.
amazing that Bob Wood has all of those. What a resource.
Yeah.
Do you want to
he's-
see it? Or just?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll forward the email.
Okay, thank you.
Just
That's
to
great.
go back, just one more clarification for the committee and the public. We met, Gina and I and Barbara and, where is he?
Terry,
Good.
Gordon.
Gordon and Terry.
And Terry, we met with Brian a couple, 3 weeks ago at the church, and he was taking pictures and getting his work, doing his work. and he had several requests, and we were able to answer a couple of those requests, and the church has other answers that they have to do. And he took wonderful pictures that day that he was there. So that's the genesis of why we have the deed restriction. And he promised that he would have it back in 2 weeks or less, and I think we got it in 10 days. So
Mhm.
kudos to him.
Yep, that was good. Okay, so we will,
He had asked earlier in an email who was going to hold the preservation restriction, whether it was the HDC or Mass Historic or some other entity. And I was wondering how that was resolved. Who actually will hold the preservation restriction?
that's one of the questions that Brian has asked that we forwarded on to the town attorney and the town manager.
When the CPC funded renovations of the Unitarian Church, they asked us, the Historic District Commission, to hold the preservation restriction for the Unitarian Church. And that meant when they wanted to do any further renovations to the church, that they would have to come to us for a certificate of appropriateness if any other changes were made. The memorial buildings preservation restriction is held by the Mass Historical Commission. So we would gladly take that on since we already have one preservation restriction anyway.
Mhm.
We would, and we work with the Congregational Church.
Right, that would be my guess, that they would put it to the HDC.
Yeah.
But
That's actually
again,
was our
that's my
recommendation.
guess.
That's actually was our recommendation when we met with Brian. But the town attorney has to help make that decision. So we should reach out to him and make sure he gets this done quickly.
Mhm. Yep,
When it was done last time, Mayor Lee, who was chair, called and asked me if we would do it, if we would take it. And of course, I agreed. So I hope we're contacted in some kind of official way by the town attorney. I mean, we want to know if indeed we do hold the preservation restriction.
Mhm.
Well, let's our minutes should reflect that you have said that you guys at the HDC would be happy to hold the restriction.
Right, and we can reach out to the town attorney and the town manager saying that we had the discussion. And that in light of the fact that the HDC holds the deed restriction for the Unitarian Church, that to keep it constant, that the HDC be asked again if they would accept this one.
Right, and it's in the historic district to begin with,
Right,
whereas
correct.
the Unitarian Church was not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right,
Right, okay.
okay,
Thank you for that.
good, thank you. Anything else on the church?
I've been in communication with Brian the last couple of days, and
Mhm.
I informed him of the meeting tonight, and I thought perhaps that the paperwork would have come back from the attorney's office by now. And he is simply waiting for everything to come back. And when he receives it, he'll be submitting everything to the Mass Historical Commission in Boston. So tomorrow, is there anything that I could possibly give him for a time frame that we might hear about?
I requested sooner than soon as possible. I will try to get, I will try to get a time frame.
The medical term is we need it stat, not
Okay,
ASAP. As soon as possible could be 10 years from now.
that's why I said sooner than as soon as possible.
Right. So we'll push it hard.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's urgent and important. So we'll try to get it as quickly as possible. I do know
Yep.
the town attorney has been slammed with a couple of other things that required last minute action.
Okay,
Mhm.
so before we submit it to Brian, of course, my group at the church will want to review it
Mhm.
because when it goes to Brian, that's the final.
Right. Well, when we get
Okay.
it back from, it'll probably not come directly from the town attorney. He'll probably give it to the town manager.
Actually,
Although in the
Gina-
past, in the past, the town attorney has also sent directly from me. But when we get it from whoever we get it from, we'll make sure it goes to you first.
Yeah, just to
Okay.
make sure you know, Gina sent today an email to the town manager asking that be done.
Mhm. Yeah, she
Yes,
said
it's
last
better.
month, she said last month that she requested that it'd be back before the meeting tonight, but
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. We
Well,
understand.
Things may move a little more slowly at Mass Historical than we would like. There've been some changes up there, and Chris Skelly, who is the director of local programs and who is my liaison, has been there for 22 years, and he resigned a couple of weeks ago. And so I don't think things are going to move. Jennifer may know much more about that than I do, but he was a really effective director and point person up there.
Mm.
Mhm. Okay. Anything else for the church? I've also asked that the grant agreement that we had sent a while back, that get moved along too. So hopefully soon.
and we have a Word copy of that was submitted from Jen's office, right?
Correct.
Thank
Correct.
you.
Okay, next thing, recap of the public hearing. The Bridgewater Housing Trust. First, before we get into, I guess as part of the recap, I want to thank Jen for her wonderful presentation that she gave. Every time I listen to a presentation from you, I learned something that I thought I knew, but I guess I didn't. So I thought it was wonderful.
Thank
We
you.
need you back every year for our presentations.
Okay.
No, I thought it was wonderful. And I want to publicly thank you for it. It was very good. Okay, public housing, the Bridgewater Housing Trust. What are our next steps? There's a lot of interest in housing. Carlton and I, when we talked, I don't know, my days are they're just flying too quick. Last week or the week before, we met with Jennifer Burke and Michael Dutton on a consultant update that I'll get to later, but we did mention about the public hearing and the housing trust. Carlton can probably give his take on their response. I don't think we got too far with it, to be honest. I did suggest in an email to both of them after the housing trust presentation a couple months back. I did send an email about how wonderful the housing trust presentation was and suggested that they look at it. We brought that up in our meeting last week, and they seemed interested that they were going to go back and look at it. So hopefully they do. But I guess our question now is, what are the next steps? Can we move on without the community and economic development folks moving on it? Do we have to wait for them? I'm not sure what our next steps are.
I'll just add that I wasn't as encouraged as Gina was in terms of what they want to do. Not getting into the details, but what's that?
I didn't hear you. What did you say? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I keep burying my microphone. I said I was not as hopeful as Gina just conveyed.
I see.
Without getting into any really details, it just seemed to me that that was not high on their list.
Right.
To do, and they will always come back to there's no money. In order to get money in there, you need to have what's called I'm going to say infill, and Jen knows the other term I'm always missing out, but you can do zoning. That one of the incentives to do the certain zoning would be to put money into the housing trust. And
Yeah, it's a inclusionary zoning payment.
inclusionary.
But there is money because the CPA has money, and that's what
Mhm.
typically is the main source of revenue for housing trusts. I mean, I would say if anybody wants my opinion, I would just say that the first step is to fully appoint the board. And I would say that, that would be the first step. And then the second step is for the board to come up with an action plan, a board of trustees to come up with an action plan on what they want to use the money for, and then go ask for the amount of money they need to support that action plan.
Mhm.
I hear
Good,
you loud and
thanks.
clear. I
Thanks,
hear you loud
Jen.
and clear. We also asked them to go read or go listen to your presentation on the housing trust that you gave us 2 or 3 months ago. No idea if they've done that or not, if they've had time or not. I think I would like to get sort of a poll on the interest of the committee here to convey to the town manager exactly what Jen just said. That we, based on the communications, et cetera, that we would submit, Gina would draft or someone would draft a letter to the town manager and the CED director indicating that this committee would like to see the town move towards fully appointing the Housing Trust Committee. Secondly, that they develop an action plan. And thirdly, that they have, quite frankly, I'm going to say, have a presentation on what the Housing Trust should be doing and how they should operate. That would be the 3 steps that I see, and I think we should make a formal letter to the town manager. Yes, Jen?
If I may make a political suggestion, and it's not really my place, but it's my last meeting with you, so I might as well.
You can say anything.
I would
Swing
send
for
the
the
letter
fences.
to, I would
Good.
send the letter to the town council too, because I think at least some of the
Yeah.
town council members are very supportive of that
Yeah.
idea. And that may be helpful to bring it to their attention as well.
Excellent.
Good idea.
Absolutely.
But I think the only way, the proper way we should do our business is to do formal letters and communications, and that doesn't mean email, it means a formal letter.
Okay. Just writing down the 3 steps.
I have some other ideas but I want to go to Michael one-on-one to talk about those.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
I've mentioned them in the past, and some of you may recall.
Mhm.
It involves money.
Okay. The feeling of the CPC to send the letter to Jennifer Burke and Michael Letton and copy the town council members, as Carlton has and Jen have suggested. Any discussion on that? Steve, you lit up. No?
We'll take.
Oh
we'll
no,
take-
I was muted and on video, but no, I agree. I think that we should what Carlton had mentioned is the way we should go.
Yeah, I agree as well.
Okay, I agree too. Harry or Jean or Kevin, anybody
I
thoughts?
agree.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, good. And Jean's nodding. I got it. I see you nodding.
So we have a consensus, that mean we have a consensus?
Yes.
In the letter,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I will draft a letter. Carlton, I might pass it by you for any further thoughts on it, that if something needs to be changed or worded differently.
Happy to review it.
Okay, great.
Somebody just joined on an iPad. Could we understand who that is?
Yep. Who do we have joined on the iPad?
You're muted.
Hello?
Oh, boy.
Okay, we have a iPad person. Could the iPad person that just joined identify yourself?
We need it for our records.
And if you're muted, just unmute yourself.
Okay. Kevin Griffin.
Okay, great.
Kevin.
Thank you so much, Kevin. We just need to keep track of like guests and things.
I hear you.
And we like it.
Okay. Are you a Bridgewater resident, Kevin?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Just
Thank
a
you
little
for
late.
coming. Okay. So I'll get that letter off. Next thing is open space and agricultural preservation. This was brought up at the hearing, mainly, I believe, in regards to Hanson's Farm. Carlton, do you
I
want
can-
to?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to speak on that? I think Janet's here too. Janet Hanson.
Oh, there's Janet. Hi. And Janet, if I get anything wrong, which is not unusual, please correct me, but I've had a conversation with Dave, and I know that the Hansons have an interest in some kind of conservation restriction on the farm. That the farm is also in our 5-year plan to work and try to see what might be done there. I understand the following, that they have had the land surveyed, which is a requirement for anything that goes forward. And they've also done some appraisal. If it comes to be that the committee would want to do something in that area, or otherwise, we would have to have an appraisal that we would pay out of our admin funds, that kind of thing. So I think there's interest. The question is, and I also will say that I know that the Hansons have talked with the town manager and the economic development director. And I don't know how quickly or slowly they want to move, but I think it's getting to the point where it's probably bubbled up to the surface, so to speak. Janet, if you would like to brief us on anything, I would happy. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Jen Goldson to talk to us about what we could do in terms of conservation of farmland.
Carl, I wish David was here, but he's stuck at the farm, so I honestly can't provide you any information. I honestly don't know the details, so I'm sorry. It's nice to hear this, but unfortunately, I don't have any way of feedback or confirming or anything. I'm glad to be able to be on tonight because I had a meeting and it ended early, so I just got on.
Mhm.
So,
I'm glad too. I personally think that we should recess, go down to Sugar Hill Dairy and have an ice cream and talk to David.
That's the best idea of the evening.
I second that.
That's a very practical way to be. Yes.
What I was going to say is, I understand totally, as a kid that grew up on a farm, that farmers don't come home until after dark.
yeah, the lighter it's, he tends to stay late anyways, but daylight, he keeps on going. So, yeah, it gets worse and worse as the time goes.
Hanson Farm is the pride and joy of Bridgewater,
It
at least in my view.
It is.
I think
Yes, it is.
it's the
Thank you.
pride and joy.
Thank you.
Definitely.
So Jen
Um,
Goldson, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, Jen, what are the steps?
Yeah, so there's not much that the CPC would do right now. I would say that your open space committee, I don't know, who's the open space member?
Eileen Heine is here. She's the chair of open space.
Oh, good, yeah. So
We
I
haven't
would
had a
say
representative.
it's really should be under the purview of the open space committee. And
Yes.
what the committee could really do is start to talk with the Hansons and start to understand what is the kind of the objective. There are a few objectives. So there could be a conservation restriction or an agricultural preservation restriction. Those are two different things. So you'd want to think carefully about what type of restriction the town may want to buy. And then once you sort of negotiate what you're actually looking for, and I can tell you the difference between those two types of restrictions in a minute. But once the open space committee sort of determines, well, what is it that we're asking for? Then what you'd want to do is hire your own appraiser, meaning the open space committee as an applicant. You could ask for CPA funds to do this, to support this preservation, this open space preservation project. But what you'd want to do is have your own appraiser verify the results of the Hanson's appraisal. And what you really want to know is how much value is in the conservation restriction or the agricultural preservation that we're looking to buy. So you're not actually buying the whole property. So if the appraiser that has already worked on an appraisal looked at the value of the whole property, that's very helpful analysis, but that's actually not what the value of the conservation restriction or the APR is, because there's still use of the property. The town's not, I don't think in this hypothetical scenario looking to buy the property, but just a restriction on the property. So that's a reduced value from the full value of the property. And what you need to do is get an independent appraiser that is hired by the town and working on behalf of the town's interests to help the town determine, well, how much is that worth? How much is that restriction worth? And then the open space committee could put together a request for CPA funds. And maybe it's leveraged with other funding. There are some funds with the agricultural preservation program in the state that you can get. I don't know what the grant cycle is, but you can get funds to really leverage the CPA funds to help buy that if it's an APR that you're looking for. If it's a conservation restriction, then you can go to the land, LAND grant program by the state. And there may be other programs that you could also get some funds, but that's the one I'm most familiar with. And then you may also have the opportunity to have a local land trust or a regional land trust. Like, I don't know if Wildlands Trust for Southeastern Massachusetts would be interested in teaming on a project like this. They may or may not. But something to consider in terms of other partners who could bring other resources to it and really kind of assemble a deal. But I would say that that's really under the purview of the open space committee, sort of negotiating and putting all that together, and then putting together an application to request whatever funding they need, in addition to putting together the application for if you want to go for state money as well. So I just want to pause if there's questions. I also, after I pause, I want to dive back in and talk about the difference between an APR and a conservation restriction, just so people are kind of clear of those choices. But are there any, does that make sense what I just talked about? Are there any questions on that?
And I have a question. This is Eileen. Is the mass conservation grant that you just referred to, is that the tax credit program? Is that? Could you step?
The land grant?
What is
you know
that program?
I'll put a
No,
link.
not land grant. I know that land is different, but I think you referred to something, the first thing you referred to.
Oh, the
was-
agricultural
could you describe
preservation restriction. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
the
I
state-
think, Jen, you said something about
No,
land,
the-
LAN.
the
the
LAND is
funding
the land
source.
grant.
Yeah,
The
funding
first thing I
source.
said,
You're over talking each other.
sorry.
What was the first funding source that you mentioned?
Yeah, it's for agricultural preservation restrictions. And I'm gonna post something in the chat so you can have a link to that.
Okay.
It's run by the Department of Agricultural Resources. It's another state department. And I just found the link here, so I'm gonna go ahead and post that here in the chat.
Okay, great.
So, so let me, unless there's another question, I'm happy to go into the difference between an APR and a CR.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so an APR, agricultural preservation.
No, I think they're gone for the night, to be honest with you. I didn't see any.
Can you mute yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So it's okay. So the agricultural preservation restriction would basically not just allow agriculture, but it would essentially mandate that the land remain in farming use. And that means that, you know, if the Hansons at some point in time were to sell the property, it would need to remain a farm, an active farm. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same type of farm it is now, but it has to be some kind of active farm, because the whole point of the state's APR program is to keep active farms in Massachusetts, keep them going.
Yes.
And you may or may not qualify for the APR program. It really depends a lot on the soils. And I don't know enough about the soils on this, on the Hanson's property, but if you look at that link that I just sent, it focuses on saving farms that have prime or state important agricultural land, and that's determined by the soil type. And so you'll want to see, you may or may not qualify for that. I just don't know. But I'm sure if you contacted someone at this state APR program, they could tell you pretty quickly if the Hanson's farmer, I don't know if you have multiple properties, but if any of them would qualify for that. So that's what an APR is. It basically says that this land shall be forevermore farmed. Now, a conservation restriction is different. It's different because it doesn't mandate that it's farmed. What it does is it says that you can't develop here. But if you don't, and you can farm if you want to, but the natural habitat is the most important thing in our CR. And that's what the CR is really protecting. It's not so much protecting the land for a farm. It protects it for natural habitat. So if at some point in the future, there was not a farming use, then the land could go wild and basically become natural habitat again. But what it does is it does specify what types of farming uses are appropriate for a CR. And it could be that some activities impact the natural habitat of the land and may be restricted. And I don't know what kind of, farming, I should know, I just don't remember. I don't know if that would be triggered at all. I know that like hay farming is relatively benign, but there are certain times of the year because of the habitat use of the hay fields that you can cut and not cut. And I know enough to be dangerous right now. I don't want to claim to be a naturalist, so I don't even know the times of years or what species we're protecting, but I know that that's a consideration. So a CR, the purposes of the two are really very different. The CR is about natural habitat and it can allow farming as long as it doesn't hurt the habitat, but it doesn't mandate the farming. And that's what the Murray Needs Farm has. It has a CR. An APR would then basically mandate that this shall be forevermore farmed. And it's much more about the agriculture and farming and not so much about natural resources. Either way, the property couldn't be developed or subdivided for like single family homes. So either way, it's protected as what you'd consider open space. It's just different purposes. Does that make sense in the way I explained it?
Yep.
Very good.
Very clear.
Yeah, it is very good. Calton?
So on the APR, if the town, if it went that way, who's responsible? Let's say the Hanson's family decide we're getting out of farming, but it has to always be a farm. Who's responsible for finding the farmer?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I believe the state program helps with that because they realize that that's where it gets tripped up, right? You can say it's forevermore farm, but what if you can't find a farmer? And so this program, if you look at the website, there's a manual, an APR manual and a resource guide. I would suggest reading that. There's also this APR stewardship link, and I think you'll find some more information there. It basically, talks about what's in the APR agreement, what kind of documentation you need, and then the kind of the process and what to expect going forward. So I don't have all the answers. I don't know the ins and outs of the program, but I know that the state helps with that aspect of it.
One more
You
question.
know any farm in the area, Jen, that adopted an agricultural restriction?
Yeah, I don't know offhand. I'm just looking quickly through to see if they list
I
their
think there was
properties.
a list of them somewhere on that site. I looked at it several weeks ago. But
Yeah,
Langwater Farms Wheaton Farm over in,
Oh, okay.
oh yeah, okay.
yeah, I don't know. Now, Wheaton Farm is part trails. So I don't know if they have a conservation or
What-
or an
An
Gee,
APR, yeah.
Where is Wheaton Farm, Jean?
Wheaton Farm is on Bay Road in Easton.
So it's different than Langwater, or is this, or it's the same?
Langwater, the farm, Langwater Farm
Is in Easton?
is on Route 138
Yeah,
in
okay.
North Easton.
All
And they
right.
have several properties
Yeah,
that
okay.
they do their farming on.
yeah,
Do we
I
know
see.
what the West Bridgewater Farm, who is that? We don't know about that. It's up by Trucci's. But I don't know
The
if they're
Reading Farm, the Reading
Yeah.
Farm on
Reading.
106.
Yeah, I don't know what they do, yeah.
Jane, the Wheaton Farm, when we walked it a couple weeks ago and they were farming it, but
Yeah.
is that part of our agricultural preservation? I
Yeah,
know they had the
That's what
sign
I don't
across.
know if it's agricultural or
Conservation.
They had the sign
conservation.
across. Yeah, they had a sign across the street that it was funded. I'm trying to look back. I think I took a picture of the sign.
Yeah,
That it was funded by, I want to say community preservation, but let me,
While you look, let me ask Jen a question.
Yeah.
The Murray Needs Farm, we got money back from the state. Do you recall which organization provided the 400,000 back against the
I
cost?
thought that was a land grant, if my memory serves correct.
And a land grant can play in either one of these, do you know?
I don't know if they fund agricultural preservation restrictions. I know they will do the conservation restrictions, which is what Murray Needs was.
Okay, so that's just another factor for the town. And if this goes forward, we need to do everything we can to maximize the farm and minimize the cost to the town.
Yeah,
yeah, and even
I
if.
did just,
Well,
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I
Go
did
ahead.
just post, it looks like Ashley Davies is the Eastern Massachusetts field rep. So she might be able to, and I posted her contact info in the chat. Eileen, you may try her first, just to ask a bunch of these questions like,
Yeah,
where, do you have examples of APRs and, all the questions that came up tonight? She'd probably know off the top of her head.
Eileen, you might want to check too, the Wheaton Farm that Jean had mentioned. I had taken a picture of, we go out on these walks and I just shoot a ton of pictures. But I took a picture of their sign. It says Wheaton Farm, Eastern Conservation Commission, 900 acres. Named after Daniel Wheaton, it is Easton's largest town-owned conservation area. Wheaton, Easton's second postmaster, blah, 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 lived in the home. Actively formed and managed for wildlife. It is the site of the Easton Natural Resources Trust Day Camp and serves as a protected source of
okay, all right. Yeah, I
Easton's public water
recognize, yeah.
supply.
Okay.
Yep, and it says acquired by gift, purchase, and in part a cooperative conservation project between the town of Easton and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts beginning in 1967.
Yeah, okay.
So that could be one to mention too. It
Yeah.
sounds like it's some type of
Yeah.
a grant, or they might have just bought the land too, but it is being farmed right now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Jen, just a quick question for you. Can a land have two restrictions on it, more than one? I think it was asked before, but I forgot what the
Yeah, I
answer.
mean, you could, in theory, it wouldn't be on the same overlapping. You'd want to designate, if there's a certain area that you want to be a CR, and then a different area, maybe the active fields that you want to be the APR. But I don't believe, and this is a good question for a lawyer, which I never claimed to be. But don't think that you can have them overlapping. I think it would be too complicated, cause conflicts in terms of the, because the intentions of them both are so different. And when you come up with things that are in conflict, how do you resolve that? So I think as long as you have different parts of the land, under different restrictions, I think that could work. Does
Sure.
that make sense, Kevin?
Yeah, it's two different purposes. So I imagine that just like you said, it's kind of contradicts each other a little bit if they have more than. I mean, I think the question we need to figure out for ourselves is what's the intention, like you went through, but also what's going to be the better fit for that situation, and there's pros and cons to.
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
I think some more research should be done. I did find a map of all the farm. I don't know how updated this is, but on the website I gave you guys, there's a brochure, a program guide. I'll put that link in there too, so you can go directly to it. And if you look on page 6 of this, there's a map of all the APRs in the state, at least at the time that they wrote this guide, which
Oh, good.
may be a little old. I don't know. It says there are more than 930 farms protected in Massachusetts under the APR program.
Mm.
It'd be nice to have a little community garden area for people in town.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That would be a thought down the road.
Yeah, I just buy from the Hansons.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when they're not farming anymore.
Yeah, but
Well,
if I could learn
yeah.
from the Hansons, maybe I could grow.
Mhm.
Actually, I just found a date on this guide. It is new. It's from February 2020. Well, I guess that's a little old. I don't know.
Well, that's
2020
only a
doesn't
year
seem that
old.
long ago, so.
It's a
year.
year old.
I want to forget about the year 2020 personally.
So
Mhm.
a quick question again. The next steps should the, we'll let the, I guess the open space should pick up the ball and dribble. But at some point, should we have a joint meeting? Would you recommend that or not?
You know, I'm in favor of more communication rather than less. So I would think that, you know, maybe the open space committee does some research, and then if you have a joint meeting, you can talk about what they learned and what to expect, you know, the next steps would be.
And what kind of votes would the open space committee take on this? Like, would it something be like a vote to submit an application? What might that look like?
Yeah, I think it would be the open space committee that takes the lead on submitting the application. And in terms of a vote, I guess they would probably vote to do that.
And then it would also have to be something that is co-brokered, co-signed by the owners of the property, correct?
Correct.
Sounds to me
And
like the
whoever
very
we'd
first
want
thing
to
would be-
also already identify who would be the holder of the restriction. If it's an
Okay.
APR, I believe the state holds it.
Mhm.
That DAR, the Department of Agricultural Resources holds it. But for a CR, there's, you know, not a clear holder. It could be the town's conservation commission would be the most likely holder in that case. So you'd probably want to bring them in as an applicant as well.
Do you know who holds the restriction for marine needs?
I don't remember offhand.
Wildlands Trust was involved, but I'm not
They're
sure. If they-
involved. Yeah,
Yeah.
they might be my vague memory is they may be a co-holder.
I think that they
Um,
didn't hold, I think they backed out because I've talked with Scott McFadden there a couple times, and when I talked about that with him, it was months ago, but he said
Yeah.
that they don't really like to hold agricultural preservation restrictions that they're, and particularly with people, with public access to them as well.
Yeah,
The
it's more
fact that there was a
complicated
trail
to,
about around that, it was really
monitor.
problematic, and that was part of the reason they backed out.
Mhm. I wonder if it's different for them though. If that's the agricultural preservation. Marine needs is the conservation restriction. I wonder if it's different for Wildlands Trust, if they think differently on.
Yeah.
I think it may have to
holding
do with the use of the property because they're, you know, being a long-term holder of a restriction, it's a big responsibility in terms of what you're liable for in the future potentially. And so if there's a lot of public access or, you know, active farming, it probably increases the likelihood that they may need to, you know, file suit at some point for some violation or do some other kind of enforcement. So it's probably more like a risk analysis for them.
Was somebody asking for a they hoping that there was a map that shows all of this information earlier?
I think Jen just found one.
Oh, a map for
Or just kind
showing-
of any of the these farms or anything that I don't know if everyone's aware of the Mass GIS website, Oliver. They have a you can actually put data layers on. It'll show you who the owner is and everything. It's very useful and helpful to look at this information.
Steve, can you post a link to that in the chat?
Sure, I'll do that right
And
now.
maybe give a tutorial, Steve. I've been struggling with that. I find it really not very user-friendly. I
No,
actually
absolutely,
met someone on the mass conservation online conference a couple weeks ago, and she offered to give me a tutorial and did, and it helped a little bit, but it's still pretty confusing.
No, I use this I use it all the time, and it is quirky, but the information that's on there is pretty intense.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So you can like once you like I can look on what I did was while we're talking I clicked on Murray Needs, and it gives me like the owner, the site name, the area, the ownership. It's and when it was dated.
Mhm.
So
I'm looking at the let's see, it's the John S. and Elizabeth Needs Irrevocable Trust Agreement for a conservation restriction, and I'm trying to see who has the deed.
It sounds to me, though, that the most important thing is that we really need to talk to the Hansons.
Yes.
I
Yes,
mean,
of
their
course.
intentions are what, is what is a foremost consideration, I think, at this point.
Absolutely.
Janet, I know that David's not around. Well, he's around somewhere, but do you have any questions like to bring back to him if he wants to meet at any time with open space, or talk to anybody? He's more than welcome to and encouraged to.
Well, that's between Bob
Do we
and
have,
David,
wait,
but
wait, do we have David on here now? We have someone on that says Hanson Farm.
Bob is on there, Hanson Farm, that would be Bob, so you could ask him to unmute.
Okay, Bob, have you heard what Jen Golson, our consultant, was saying about what needs to be done if you want to put a restriction on the farm? You're muted, Bob. Bob. Okay, he's muted for us if he jumps on. Josh, you can mute people, but you can't unmute them, correct?
Well, he says he doesn't have a microphone.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he must be dialing in or something with his phone.
Okay.
Well, I think it's really clear the next step is, I think open space, if they wish to accept a charge, they would do the work, and they can contact the appropriate people and the owners of the land, and then kind of have a chat and figure out what's possible. Unfortunately, we only have Jen for another couple days, so we're going to have to find another person to help if there's any questions on that. But I think the steps are clear.
Jen, I just have another question for Jen, if I could. Jen, just to clarify, I think I already know the answer to this, but I just want to clarify. The open space can we take our funds and purchase property on behalf of the town from Hanson Farm if they want to sell it in some fashion?
Yes, you just need to have a deed restriction that restricts that land for a community preservation purpose. So probably open space in that case. And then someone would need to hold it. And the complication is when the town buys something, the town can't hold the conservation restriction then. So you'd have to find a third party to hold it, like the Wildlands Trust or the state or some other entity. So that's the
Right.
trick, but yeah, you can in theory.
Okay, yeah, that's what I figured, because if we purchased it, who would you recommend that third party to be? Would it be a trust of some sort because they're obligated to hold that?
Probably. I mean, it's tricky with I don't know if it's going to be actively farmed. There might be other trusts like Southeast Wildlands Trust that aren't comfortable holding a restriction on farmland. So that would probably be a good, if it was going to be actively farmed, I would actually really talk to the APR, the folks at the APR program, because they probably would know who could be a holder. I know that they will hold the APRs. But they might have other suggestions, because I think that a group like the Wildlands Trust, which is the most likely, land trust in your area, probably wouldn't hold an active farm, restriction on an active farm.
So my question again, just to follow up with that, is if we did have a third party that holds the restriction in some fashion, have you ever had in your experience, like when it's a third party that holds the restriction and the town owns it? I mean, the whole purpose we put it in a third party is to reduce the temptation to just develop it or something like that. So it would be in a third party, but have you ever had have you ever had, from your experience, or have you heard of a third party dismissing or getting rid of their responsibility to hold that restriction?
Well, I haven't, but I mean, I wouldn't claim to. I know I talk like I'm an expert, but I'm really not an expert in this. I
Okay.
don't know enough examples to know how often that happens. I know that usually it has some provisions for if you need to assign your responsibilities, like what the procedures are and what type of entity, because sometimes, trusts are nonprofit organizations, right? So they could go bankrupt, they could dissolve. And then you have to have some provisions in the conservation restriction that says who else could hold it and how does that decision get made? But I
Right.
don't know how often it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was like a little concerned about, because like if we give it to the power or to someone to hold it,
Mhm.
and they become insolvent, just like you mentioned, and then I can see the logical progression. It goes back to the town, and then who knows what happens at that point.
Yeah, I think they would need to identify another qualifying holder, which may or may not be easy. It kind of depends on if there
Okay.
are other entities out there.
Okay,
Jean has
got
a
it.
question.
Thank you.
Jean has a question. Jean
Me?
Greeno?
Josh, when would this meeting be, the video of it be posted? And maybe Bob could look at the video and see.
It should be posted tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yep.
And Josh, along that line, in the minutes, anything, if you have a posting by the time the minutes are developed, could we include the posting in the minutes? The link, I mean?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would be great.
Yeah.
Just to go back to Kevin's question, thank you, Josh.
Just a minute, Carlton. Can you add the where Bob could find in the chat so that Bob has that information, or tell him where he can find the video? Then he can at least see everything that we talked about.
Sure.
Thank you.
To the question, I think the deed issue that Kevin was talking to is a legal issue because this is a deed restriction. It goes with the deed and it's registered with the county registry of deeds, and therefore it has huge legal responsibilities. I will also say, I don't believe the town manager nor we would want to consider purchasing the land. We are most interested in making sure that the land is under conservation or agricultural, whichever is the best for the Hansons and for the town. So I know the town manager would probably take us to the woodshed or behind it if we suggested that we would buy the land.
But we can do it if we
could do it, but the council would have to be the ones convinced to do it.
Of course.
Mhm.
But Jen, I really appreciate your input, even if you're not a lawyer.
Excuse me.
Mhm. Okay,
All right, well, it sounds like the Open Space Committee will take this on. We have a meeting tomorrow, so I'll inform them of the discussion. Kevin, I hope you'll be there tomorrow.
I'll be there.
All right, good. And
Don't you worry, I'll be there.
yeah. And I had started reading up a little bit of some of this on my own, and I hope I'll have a better grasp of it. I'll never get as good as Jen, but I'm working on it. So anyway, and I think maybe, we were talking, one of the things on our agenda, your agenda for tonight is a joint meeting between CPC and open space. I mean, maybe this would be one of the prime areas of discussion. Might be the first item on a joint agenda, because I think open space is pretty new, as you all know, and we haven't had a lot of experience in negotiating anything, never mind a CPC grant. So I think having some of you involved at the beginning, as we talk to the Hansons, might be a good way to approach it.
We should make a meeting and have an ice cream. We can talk about
I'll just note that the Hansons have posted their email address, I believe, in the chat box.
Yeah, I had asked Bob for it because I didn't think that Josh would have the link for the recording like immediately. I thought that we could send it to him, so I had asked Bob for his email. He said he was, if you've been reading the chat, and for those of you that haven't, or for anybody watching the recording afterwards, Bob Hanson had been interested in the steps to take, so he can catch up on the recording. He was just having difficulty with no microphone to speak. But okay, and Bob, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to one of us or open space. It's kind of in the hands of open space first for our discussion tonight.
This is Eileen Heine, I'm chair of open space. David knows that, but I don't know if you do. So,
Bob, also just to quick tell you, we don't have the services of Jen Golson effective the end of this month, sadly, but for business reasons, which you understand well, she's going to do some other things, but we hope to retain her on a case-by-case basis if we can. So just to let everybody know that. So it ain't over till it's over, right, Jen?
so is there been a possibility that we could have Jen help us work through this as a separate contract? Is that what you're saying, Colin?
We potentially could, if I would leave it, that's a possibility.
Okay.
We'd have to talk to her about this kind of level of support and whether it fits her new business plan.
Okay.
Right, and it's something that once her contract is done, like right now, she's being paid out of CPC budget. So it comes up with the question of would she be paid out of open space?
Does open space have money? Do you guys have money?
That was going to be my next question. I'm not sure.
We do. We do.
We don't have a budget for our committee.
Yeah, what's your budget?
We don't have one.
Uh,
You're talking about within the CPC funds?
No.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I thought we did.
I thought every department would have some, because you have an admin for your committee.
No.
Okay.
And there really hasn't been a functioning committee. Kevin's been it for about the last 4 or 5 years. So.
Yeah, Kevin, was there a budget? Do you recall?
We can talk off.
We have a meeting tomorrow. We can address that in our meeting.
Right.
The chairs of the committee can talk about funding.
Yeah.
Okay, Jen, Bob has asked a question. Do you remember the meeting you attended here 5 or more years ago?
Yeah, I do for sure.
Yep. Okay, good.
Good discussion. I really appreciate the information, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah, it was very good. Again, I learned more from
Could we possibly talk about the possible date for our joint meeting?
Sure.
So I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile to to have it as a separate meeting rather than open space joining you at one of yours or you joining us, rather than that we set up a joint meeting at a different time than our normal meeting dates. The reason I suggest that is right now, we're meeting tomorrow and we're planning on meeting with the Conservation Commission, hopefully on the 27th of May. And I'm also trying to set up a joint meeting with the Planning Board. And so I'm not sure how easy it will be to get these all worked in over the, and I'd like to move on this one fairly quickly, to talk about the Hanson. So what about the idea of setting a meeting date sometime in May, subject to Open Space Committee ratification of whatever we agree to tonight? They'll meet tomorrow, and maybe something other than the fourth Wednesday of the month, like perhaps the third Wednesday or.
Okay, Eileen, just a couple things. My thought is that the Hanson should decide first which type of restriction they would like before we have the joint meeting. So we can talk more how to proceed, or possibly the
Okay.
Hansons could be involved in the joint meeting.
In the joint meeting, yeah, that's what
The second thing is, if it's the time like we usually meet at 6:30, if it's the third Wednesday of the month, the planning board meets.
Yeah, they're the first and the third, I guess, right?
Right,
Yeah.
so we lose Jean, and depending what's on the agenda, we might lose others too.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
May I
the
suggest we hold off? May I suggest we hold off for a little bit? I think there's a lot of research and fact finding and figuring
Right.
out the objectives and that. And I think if the open, I hear the open space willing to pick up the ball and run with it for a bit. So I think once you get to some definitive information, et cetera, and maybe require CPC input, or you talk, maybe the next thing we talk as a joint would be what an application might look like. So that we don't spin our wheels a whole lot and don't work over
Mhm.
each other. That's my
Yep,
suggestion.
I agree.
Okay, well then, are you suggesting that the item you have under new business, and that we won't try to set a joint meeting tonight? I wasn't sure, you put this on your agenda, I wasn't sure what you had in mind. Was this going to be a general discussion between CPC and open space about a wide range of issues? I was suggesting it be more about Hanson's. I think that makes sense, that we do our research first. But so do we want to set up an open space CPC joint meeting for any other discussion?
I think in that meeting that we could have a focus on that, but I also would add that we have a discussion of the open space plan and our plan as to how they come together and what might be priorities. I think this is the highest priority right now. And I think that possibly we could start to say what are the real priorities that we actually can make progress on over the next 3 or 4 years. That would be my suggestion.
Mhm. I think we should definitely hold off on like meeting to talk about the agricultural preservation or conservation restriction for the Hanson's farm until, as Carlton said, more research is done. I think the Hansons need to discuss which type of restriction that they'd be interested in. And
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
yeah.
I agree with that. So I suggest then that we not worry about a joint meeting between our two committees in the next 30 to 60 days. Because I
Right.
I have those others that need to get scheduled, and I'd rather just do the research on the Hanson's issue, so.
Mhm.
all right.
Yeah,
And
and
we'll have time to talk with the Hansons as well, you know, in between that time.
right. And Bob and Janet, if Janet, you can relay to David to feel free to reach out to any of us. Eileen for open space. As we said, open space has the ball in their court right now to get things started, but anybody from CPC would be glad to answer any questions you have too.
Just one more. See, Eileen, you said you were going to meet with Concom soon?
Well, I'm meeting with, my committee is meeting tomorrow, and we're gonna, I hope, decide to meet with Concom on May 27th.
Okay, so Harry, you probably know, but I'm just going to say Harry is on the Concom. He represents
yeah.
the Concom. So I hopefully, with the Hanson's permission, I think you probably could speak a little bit about what's going on, in broad reaches in those two meetings. I just don't want to get too far outside of the roadway here with the Hansons. Because it's, these minutes are public. So once anybody else sees this or views it or reads our minutes, they're going to know that there are discussions, and I just want to make sure the Hansons are okay with that.
Yep.
You can give me a thumbs up or not.
Okay, and yeah, and Bob, you can put into the chat.
I agree with Carlton's statement as well. I feel awkward making assumptions before we find out what the
Mhm.
Hansons really want to do. Like, it's their property. It's, they have to come to a decision before we rush into it so much.
Right, I agree. Janet or Bob, do either of you have questions? Bob, you can type them in the chat if you have questions.
Yeah, Bob just typed, it's going to come out sooner or later. So I think
Correct.
that's probably it's fine to keep moving forward here.
Mhm. Right, and Janet just said she thinks they need to discuss things first, and I agree. Before open space can move on, CPC can't do anything till open space requests it. But I think the first thing is the Hansons need to discuss it. The farm's been their life for so long. It's not an easy decision, and there's a lot of research that goes into making the decision. So I think it's something that they need to look at and also not be rushed on, because as I said, there is a lot to look at. It's a big decision for them, for the families.
Okay.
Okay. I want to thank Janet and Bob for being on here. I still think we should have left for an ice cream, but that's okay. But no, thank you to both of you for being here and joining into the discussion.
Can we still invite Jen to our meeting at Hanson Farm to have an ice cream, even after her contract's up?
That
Yes,
depends.
we
It
can.
depends if she
Yeah,
wants
you
to
can
come down
invite
and visit
me.
me.
I'll come if I can.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
make
please
sure
do.
you're invited.
Please.
Okay, we have to be careful if we're together, it has to be a posted meeting.
Well,
Please,
actually, we can get together.
please.
We just can't talk business.
Oh, okay, sounds good.
Right. Yeah, technically.
Okay, moving on to our,
Cemetery.
my goodness, we're still on the recap of the public hearing. The cemeteries were a big issue. I was surprised there's so much interest in town cemeteries. It's under the jurisdiction, town cemeteries are under the jurisdiction of Park and Rec, who actually has one of the smallest budgets in the town. But we did mention it, Carlton and I did mention it to the town manager and Jennifer Burke when we spoke to them, that there was a big interest in cemeteries, and that at some point, if somebody could do an assessment of the cemeteries of what needs to be done, that it would help address a lot of the concerns and the interest that was brought out at the public hearing.
Since I missed that meeting, just really quick, is there a quick recap of what was the concerns with the cemeteries?
The cemetery, and Janet Hanson can probably answer this better. The cemetery on the corner of Summer and Plymouth. I think the stones are kind of beat up.
Yeah, the first, there are 13 cemeteries that town has ownership of. I'm in the process of putting a Google Earth rendition up, identifying those locations so we can all be aware of where they are. Based on that meeting, the folks that are taking care of the Jennings Cemetery out on High Street and
Plain Street.
thank you. I did visit and photo documented it, and what I see there is a lot of older stones that are broken or stones that have fallen and need to be stood up. A lot of them have moss on them, et cetera, and need to be cleaned. So that
Properly.
was, say again?
Cleaned properly.
Cleaned correctly, that's right. And we know people in town who know how to do that. But the point was is we're not totally cognizant of what the town could apply for, or the cemetery caretakers could apply for with respect to restoration of stones in cemeteries. Jen, have you any experience?
Mhm.
No.
I don't have specific experience. I mean, I know that communities have done that, but I don't have any firsthand experience with it.
I mean, like, I guess the thing that comes out for me is like, these are people's, you know, private graves. Are they, I mean, the town owns the property, of course, but I imagine there's some private aspect to it because it's, you know, the family owns that plot of,
No,
or whoever,
the town owns those plots. At this point, you're right. You're correct in that there's family history in that in there. But I
Yeah.
believe the plot, it's just like the Catholic Church on Mount Prospect. They own the cemeteries behind them, and you buy the plot from them. I don't know. I know the Jennings Cemetery has some recent burials, recent being in the last 5 years, and I just don't know if they applied to the town for the plot. I don't know how that works. That's probably a good thing to learn.
They've received funding through the Cultural Council. They received grants the last 2 years. The Jennings Hill Cemetery Committee. They've applied for Cultural Council grants, and it's been approved 2 years in a row for the money going towards the cleaning materials, and also potentially putting together a kind of like a historical, but also kind of like how and why they're doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is the cultural council, like, what is their function in regards to like a historic cemetery?
The council, what it is when you think of grants, the cultural council is given, the state gives each cultural council a certain amount of funds that they need to grant out. And the Jennings Cemetery preservation falls under historical, falls under like culture. So it's an approved. Yep.
Okay, I wasn't thinking of cultural that way, but that makes sense. I actually had a cultural grant way back when in my youth. But okay, but that's a good point. Janet has written in the chat, the Summer Street Cemetery, which she has an interest in, is called the First Cemetery. Sad it hasn't been maintained, the walls, broken headstones, etc. She would like to try to spruce it up, especially the walls and hopefully some of the headstones. She's partial to it because her son did his Eagle Scout project there to honor the veterans who served in the Revolutionary War of 1812. There's an African-American buried there that served in 2 wars. It's the first cemetery in Bridgewater, and has a history like the others. But Kevin, you brought up a good point. If it's a privately owned stone, like the church at the cemetery for St. Thomas Aquinas, if you want to have your stone cleaned or fixed, you do it yourself. The church doesn't do it.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, these people that fought in the Revolutionary War probably don't have family that are taking care of the stones. I'm not sure how recent somebody's been buried there, but that's a very good question. Would somebody, I mean, obviously, if somebody came to me, I paid last year to have my parents, or a couple years ago, to have their stone cleaned. If somebody came to me and said, "We'll clean it for you," I'd be thrilled. But there's always the people that would say, "Hey, it's my stone."
Well, if,
So that was a good question that you brought up. Thank you.
well, if you one thing that you should look at locally, the old graveyard in West Bridgewater on South Street.
Mhm.
That one, that's I believe that's a town-owned cemetery, and that one has been in the process of being refurbished, where they had someone going in and cleaning off all the stones. I don't have the details on that one as to how that was funded, but that's a good local one to research how that was handled, being a potentially a town-owned cemetery.
Mhm.
I know that West Bridgewater, not West Bridgewater, Middleborough has a group that cleans cemeteries down in Middleborough, and they do they put together funding, but and they do it in town-owned properties.
Mhm.
Mm.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I know that cemetery on South Street, I noticed one day it had a lot of stones that were tipped over and broken too.
Yeah, all of the old cemeteries are in need of TLC. As
Mhm.
to the First Church Cemetery, I guess I have to go my great something grandfather's stone.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly special. I think we can all agree on that. It's incredibly special to have these historic, um, you know, cemeteries that from our forefathers and going back generation. And I know there was an issue with people, these complete jerks that try to push the headstone over and broke them, and rose. I remember that happened a few years ago, and that was horrible. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's that protected, first of all, and then number two is like and I'm sure people. It definitely needs to be cleaned. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, the people that are in the private lots that are owned by a church or something. I imagine it would be easy just to go to that organization and just ask if we can clean them on behalf of the town, and maybe they could be the ones to ask people if they want their headstone cleaned or not, if we were going to go
Mhm.
down that route.
That
Mhm.
would apply to the
My
Mount Prospect Cemetery because that's privately owned.
my
Yeah.
Janet answered my question when I said I don't know when the last burial took place in the first cemetery. It was 1867.
And actually, a little bit of history on the first cemetery is that once they built the Mount Prospect Cemetery, they actually exhumed a lot of caskets and stones and transplanted them to the Mount Prospect. So some headstones and some bodies that were at First Cemetery were relocated to the new cemetery, and then that was around like 1843, 1846, 1843, right around that time. And
Yeah.
and also the stone wall around the first cemetery,
Mhm.
the way that was created and funded, it was a town organized fundraiser, and where for people putting funds together to make that stone wall and actually to contribute in building it.
My understanding is that there are some grandchildren of pilgrims buried in the First Cemetery.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And
Yeah, my family.
yeah, I mean, that's really special.
Mhm.
But do
And another cemetery that somebody had mentioned, the woman couldn't be at the public hearing, but had written to me, was the Scotland Cemetery on Pleasant Street. She was concerned about the gate was falling apart, but we're not sure. We'd have to look into it if that's like a historic gate or Is it just a gate that was put up recently that's falling apart? So that would have to be looked into.
Yeah, I will remind the committee that we did fund the replacement of the iron fence at the Mount Prospect Cemetery because that
Yes.
steel that was there before had been used in World War II for the effort. And so that was legitimate to replace that one with proper design. So I think the cemetery question is going to come up. I thought the folks might be online tonight to listen, but I'm sure
Yeah.
they're quite busy because they've been out there cleaning the Jennings Hill.
Jennings Hill.
Jennings Hill.
It's a
Right.
wonderful walk.
Yeah.
Carlton,
Okay.
is that's really true? They took the steel and during World War II, they took off all the steel on the gate there and then
No, they
left.
took the whole fence. They took the whole iron fence down, and then they put it replaced it with a wooden fence. I think that's what was there, and then the committee years ago funded replacement.
Steve, do you know why they,
Oh.
just a little aside before we move on, do you know why they moved the stones to Mount Prospect and exhumed the bodies?
Because it was actually they felt it was a grander cemetery. They wanted to have their families live, or kind of not live. They wanted to have their families rest in the new cemetery.
On the hill.
Okay.
That was known as the Protestant cemetery too. The Mount Prospect was known as the Protestant cemetery, as opposed to the St. Thomas, which was the Catholic cemetery. There's actually a corporation that is responsible for Mount Prospect Cemetery, and there's a committee. My wife used to be on that. Judith Gabriel is the president of that corporation.
Right. I actually noticed the other day I had gone to my sister-in-law's parents' grave, and going out, I was just looking at a lot of stones, and I was amazed that the ones that were like early 1800s. So I wonder if those were some of the ones that were moved.
Probably, yeah.
They're ideal spots too.
I was wondering when were they moved? Do you know that?
I think it was actually right around the time it would have been moved around the 1840s, 1840s to 1850s, and one thing I didn't mention, but in the chat, I added a link to the epitaphs of Old Bridgewater. It's there's a book that describes the headstones of every single headstone in Bridgewater in the old cemeteries.
Oh, neat.
It transcribes it. It has maps of all the cemeteries, and it's so it's a really great resource.
Neat. I like looking at the epitaphs on the cemeteries.
Have you ever looked at Find the Grave website?
I'm a contributor to that. Yeah.
It's fabulous. It's fascinating. Yeah. And then there are frequently links to historical documents about those people. That's a fabulous website.
And I think one thing that we were talking about in the beginning, I think Kevin, you had a question of where does the town fall in this, and or why was it so interesting to the people at the CPC public hearing?
Yes.
I think that if you really think about like the Mount Prospect Cemetery, it's a garden style cemetery. It's made for walking through, and so even though these are cemeteries, they are open space and for people to go and have like quiet recollection walks through. They're meant to be beautiful, so that's if you take care of them, it's another place for residents can go and enjoy themselves. As I know some people find enjoying yourself in a cemetery weird, but there's some beautiful things.
That was a Victorian pastime, going through cemeteries.
I have to say I'm one of those people. I walk through cemeteries. I walk through the St. Thomas, the new St. Thomas Cemetery, the old one too, but more so the new one. And look at the stones. I get my exercise. I just see who's there, who isn't. But
I've always viewed the cemeteries as like the Achilles heel of maintenance in town, not just our town, but I'm sure a lot of towns. But it's a very humbling experience because we're all going to end up in the cemetery one way or the other. So,
and if you go up to Concord, like they have the it's a tourist thing. Like you go up to Poets, but I think it's like Poets Ridge where you can see all the poets, and it's an attraction to the town. And I think that things like Mount Prospect, or like I believe that like the cemeteries are definitely an attraction and something worth preserving, and money's going.
Mhm.
Well, it's
Mhm.
also Forest Hills. Isn't that the one in
Forest
Boston?
Hills, Mount Auburn Cemetery.
Or bird watching?
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
No, Mount
Neat.
Auburn Cemetery in Watertown, Cambridge. It's a bird sanctuary. It's a horticultural. They grow special plants there. It's beautiful. You can even go there and watch movies.
Hmm,
Wow.
that's neat.
This is
Okay.
fascinating, but I think
Yeah, we need to
that we're-
move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, we need to move on. We can discuss cemeteries. Well, we can't
Yeah.
discuss cemeteries when we have our ice cream. But anyways, we can discuss further. Moving on, the next thing, policies and procedures, draft document and the application. We had a draft application that Anna Callahan had worked on back when she was with J.M. Golson. So Jen has sent Carlton and myself the Word documents of that. So we just have to go through and make sure that we have everything that we think should be in it, then forward it to the town for their review. We had some things that we wanted to discuss with the finance director, just to make sure we had it right. So that's in process, both of them, and hopefully will be completed soon.
what I will point out is that there are two attachments that we need to get inserted and finalized. It's the project eligibility form that we're trying to develop, and also the actual revised application that we were working on. So those are the last two major elements that I see having been marked up in this draft final document. So I will take it on myself to get this document reviewed, edited, and out to the committee for review before the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Moving on, CPC Consultant update. The update, well, it's not an update, the Jen's contract runs out May 1st, which is Saturday. Calvin and I met with the town manager and director of economic community and economic development. I also had written to Stuart Saginaw from the state CPA coalition. He knew of no one that did the same level of consulting that Jen did. Actually told me if we find somebody to let him know. His suggestion, and Jen had suggested it too, that since she's also ended her contract or is ending with Middleborough and West Bridgewater, that we can possibly combine and join forces with them if we find someone for some type of consulting work for it. So in meeting with Michael and Jennifer Burke, Michael was going to reach out to his counterparts in both of those towns to see what they were planning to do and see if they would be interested in joining forces. We don't know of anyone that, as I said, does the same level of consulting as Jen. We would obviously more than likely have to take on a lot of the stuff that Jen did for us, grant agreements, things like that, which she has nicely forwarded us samples of all of them, so we can just, as Dragnet says, the names have been changed to protect the innocent. Just change the names of, basically use the same agreement. It's a boilerplate, just change the pertinent information to it. So we do have that. We're not at a complete loss. Well, we will be at a complete loss without Jen. But as far as documents, we're not at a complete loss. So
And in
I-
addition,
I
in
should,
addition- I'm sorry.
I should reach out to Michael to see if he has reached out to his counterparts to see where that stands.
Yeah,
Carlton?
in addition, he agreed that we would be able to access, like, for example, if we needed a housing production plan and the committee was amenable to us funding that through our admin fund or something, that we could contract with individuals to do that development. We could procure it that way. And so
Yep.
we have that level of assurance to get what I call the tier 1 level of support, or tier 3. I'm not sure which it is, but anyway, that level.
Yep. So that's where that stands.
Right.
Any discussion on that?
Yeah, do you think Kevin knew what your reference was to Dragnet?
Yeah, Kevin, do you know that one? The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Yeah, that went right over my head. I got to tell you, I don't know what that.
Actually, I watch that sometimes earlier in the morning, and it's on one of those, like, I don't have cable, so it's on one of those like 15.2 station. But Dragnet was probably the earlier years version of NCIS or one of those. And it was these 2 police officers, and they had these cases. I think they were in Los Angeles. And at the end, they say that the events were real, but the names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Oh,
So it's from a
see.
TV
Okay.
show, Dragnet.
Okay.
I
That-
love that show. I started watching it, like I said, again, some mornings if I'm up real early, I'll watch it. It's so much better than the news that's on these days.
Gene's comment reminds me that I often have to say I'm Carlton, like the doorman. Oh, I got laughs from those who know.
Yep. Yep.
That was
Hey,
only
you know
3
what?
years ago.
You know
40.
what? Some things are just stand the test of time, and that seems like it's one of them. So
I
That's-
say I'm like Gina Lola Bridgeter, and I get who. So
That's funny.
another
That's
time one
funny.
that Kevin probably doesn't know.
Josh, I think you should put the Dragnet illusion in a footnote. Not in the main minute.
Right.
Do
Very
minutes
detailed
allow?
notes of it.
I have a question. Do minutes allow footnotes?
I don't know. You can
I
put
don't know.
footnotes anywhere.
Okay, moving on to if there's no other discussion on the consultant update. Next is return to CPA funds for Recreation Legion Field project. We returned, was it $885, something to that effect. We were originally told for the last time Parks and Rec had returned funds left over from a project. And I do want to say kudos to Charlie Simons, who always tries to get it in under cost, even if it's doing some of the work himself. So the last 2 projects we funded for them, they have returned funds to us. But the last time we were told we had to vote on it. This time I was panicking because it was on the council agenda, but we hadn't voted on it yet. And I was told that we don't have to. We have to vote on the spending of money, but not the taking back of money. So that was approved last night at the town council meeting. That money's going back. As I said, I think it was like $885, roughly that much. It's going back into the undesignated, and that's where it was taken. So in the future, any funds coming back to us, we don't have to vote on. The town council does, but we don't. Okay, next is the pickleball court application status. The council approved that last night too, for the full amount that we had recommended. Now it just needs the award letter. And I started to write to Jennifer Burke today to ask for a copy of that when it's written. But Jen, is that something that towns, the CPC usually writes the award letter? I know you gave us some great samples of it, or is it the town that actually writes it?
Yeah, no, because it's typically going to the town. So the award
Mhm.
letter would be for town departments. So the CPC would write it.
Okay,
And, you know, it's pretty straightforward. And again, you have the samples. So I would say
Right.
it's just a matter of changing the key pieces. Yeah.
okay, good, thank you. Moving on, High Street project. Carlton, do you want to update us on that?
I don't have any update. Maybe Steven does.
No, I think the only updates I have is that I discussed the High Street project with the Historical Commission, and in regards to like what mitigation measures we're looking at, and at our next meeting we're gonna have a list of a more in-depth discussion as to what mitigation measures we're looking for. But other than that, there's been not much change.
Okay, great.
I can add two things that I just remembered. One, the Metakeesit tribe was joined in as a participating tribe, and they wrote a letter saying that they were fine with the dam and bridge removal. And the second thing is, in that meeting that we talked about having with Michael and Jennifer Burke, Michael emphatically stated that he would not spend any town money for mitigation measures. That should be in the record.
And if anybody needs it, I have the complete set of plans through conservation.
Oh, great, that would be
Are they
good, Harry, thank
100%
you.
or 90%, Harry?
26 pages.
Are they 100% plan or 90% plans?
I don't know.
Okay, the other thing that we did do is, I don't know if it was since the last meeting, we did have a meeting on the High Street, the Ironworks Park, and did scope out an area for the large stones to be stored, removed and stored, large stones from the bridge, and I'm assuming also from the pillar of the bridge, walking bridge, dam, I mean. So it's a work in progress. We don't know what the schedule is.
Carlton,
Okay.
Yes?
where are you, just out of curiosity, because apparently, well, not apparently, or Samaquin Club is going to do some plantings at Ironworks around the
Okay.
sign. Will that interfere with that?
Around the kiosk or the sign out on High Street?
The sign out on High Street.
I think you're fine for this year. I don't think they don't have any construction money whatsoever. And I don't know that they're going to get it. Maybe the new transportation bill might give them something. But by and large, if they don't have money, this is at the end point of that process, except for NOAA providing the, what'd you call it, Steve? The
Mitigation.
the mitigation letter, yeah.
Yeah, because I guess Les had talked to somebody at Conservation, and we had talked to Steve Black about, you know, what plants he might suggest. So just so, you know, we don't want to plant them and have them torn up.
They're certainly not going to be there this summer. No way, no way. They got too many permits and other things to do. If they start by 2024, I think they'll be lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Good.
give us a warning. We'll dig them up and put them back.
Sounds good. Anything else on the High Street project? Okay, moving on, Tool property.
I can update you, the town, the fire station committee met with the consultant, and they had 3 properties that they had him look at. I'm going to summarize a lot of discussion and points. There was a Crescent Street property that's out by the police station. It scored 76 against the 10 or 12 parameters that he scored. The other, so I'll go back. They're looking potentially to build 2 new fire stations, one headquarters and one substation like what's out on Plymouth Street. And it all depends on funding and everything else, but I'm going to keep with the assumption that we're going to build 2 more. And so those need to be located on the south or west part of town. So the Crescent Street would have been sort of the downtown one. They talked a lot about the property that College owns down by the railroad tracks. The buildings were taken down. I think that one scored 71 or something like that. And then the other property that they looked at was the Toole Memorial Park property, and that scored 96. It was almost a perfect score as to location and environment and stuff. There are some wetlands that were delineated years ago, and I don't know if anybody's found the delineation. But I think, Harry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can construct up to within 50 feet of a wetland. And basically, the wetland area is about 62 feet above sea level, and the area that's upland area is at least 70 to 85 feet above sea level. So I think you've got plenty of room to get the right buffer. The hope would be that maybe a playground could be put in for the west side, and we're still discussing whether or not we can actually think about an access to the Murray Needs Farm through that process and down the power line. Somebody said it's too wet. I know it's wet, but I think there may be other ways to get it done. And it would add about 1.5 mile walking trail to the towns and have parking that we could use. So that's the update on the Toole property. It's being looked at by the fire station, and it looks like it's going to be the leading candidate for the west side of town.
Okay, now, because that land was given for recreational purposes, is the town going to contact the family?
Yes, the town attorney's already been looking at it,
Okay.
according to them. And that is a really true question. And I think the town attorney said he thought that this is no final decision, but he thought that we could work it out.
Okay, good, thank you. A question, if they're looking to build 2 new firehouses and one's going to be considered the downtown, would that be Crescent Street or the BSU property?
No,
And the west side?
no, that's not even tractable. I will add that there was a third property on Bedford Street that was identified. I'm not going to get into it right now because it's just identified and they're going to do some more work on it. But if it goes out on Bedford Street and it's fairly close to downtown, it could be an ideal place to service the southern part of town on this side of the railroad track. I'm west of the railroad track, and also service High Street and the apartments that have been site plan was approved. And if those are built, there's going to be apartments there, complexes there. So that looks to me, when I listen to them, something on Bedford Street is an ideal location for a substation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so right now they're just looking at not replacing the downtown, quote, downtown. They're looking just at the west side for that station.
They're looking primarily on the west side. That's where the growth has been. But with the Curve Street properties going in and that kind of stuff, you still have the substation on Pleasant Street that can service that. If you go onto Bedford Street, you've got a good backup station too. So it's very complex, and I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can because I can't follow it all. But the news is that they're going to continue to look at having 3 stations, which means we would have to fund 2 new ones.
Okay, gotcha.
On town
Thank
property, I suspect.
Okay. Jean?
You mentioned a playground. We have a playground that, it's got to be maintained. I think we better skip another playground.
Well, that gets into a whole nother thing like the Jenny Leonard situation and all of that, which you know all about as a planning board member. The town's responsible for maintenance. And if the town applies for money from us, we will demand a concrete written maintenance plan. Funding, that's another problem. The playground out there could be lots of things. It could be just basketball hoops. It could be, something for little kids. I don't know what it would look like, but that's part of the thinking, at least at this point. It may not even come to fruit, but that would somehow be a way to respect the Toole family's wishes.
Maybe some sort of peaceful place.
Yeah, go down to highway line, the power lines. It's quite peaceful.
Mhm. Just don't stay under them too long.
Well, it was part of the Bay Circuit walk
Yeah.
through Easton is under the power lines. It's a long way under that area.
Yeah, no, there's lots of ways underneath, and one of the fire stations staff were concerned about was the EMFs coming off the power lines, but they took a walk out there and found out that they're quite a ways away, and those effects diminish as the E to the second or something. So they're happy with that, and the consultant scored it extremely high. The wetlands might knock the score down from 96 or 7 down to 93 or 4, he said. But wetlands is a different thing. Have it being wet and having to build, maybe we'd have to build a wooden raised, whatever you call that, like we might have to do in the, they might have to do in Stiles and Hart to get the bridge across the river. So who knows? This is just FYI for now.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, good. That place in Plymouth too, Jean, had a lot of the trails under the power lines.
Yeah. A lot of the places we've gone to.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
the EMF question, if people remember, electromotive force, there was a lot of concern about that kind of emissions affecting people's health. And I know because I just read a study that was put out 2 or 3 years ago that it's de minimis in terms of impact.
Mhm.
Not that my
Mhm.
company I work for ever did any of that kind of work, but
Okay.
moving on.
Yeah. Moving on. Any other old business? Okay. Hearing none liaison reports. I'll start. There's nothing. Well, we talked about pickleball courts. They actually not with the CPC money because that was only approved last night, but with the capital planning, capital project money, the courts were just paved recently. The asphalt was put down. So I'm not sure what that cost, but it was going to eat up a good part of the 25,000 that they had, Park and Rec had from capital projects. Now that the CPC money has been approved by the town council, they should be working right on to get the fencing. There are all the other parts that go along with it. So that's moving right along. And I don't see anything right now possibly coming up. I do want to talk to, I have a call into Charlie Simons, superintendent of grounds. It was brought to my attention that there's some of the residents on Pine Street where, and I golf and I can't picture what holes go on Pine Street against the houses, but the netting that was, oh, excuse me, Josh, can you let Steve in? He lost his connection. And he just needs to be let in. So if you could do that. There was some of the residents have said that the netting above the fence is in disrepair. To me, I haven't talked to Charlie to see for sure, but that's something that if the town or the golf course can't fund, that it's possible they might be coming to CPC. It would be a safety issue for the residents. I think it was put up as part of the mitigation when the course was built. So I need to look into that more. That was just brought to my attention yesterday.
I can add to that when you're done.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was contacted by a town councilor as to whether or not it will be eligible for CPC money. And because our rules say that, and the CPC rules say we can restore or fix up things that were funded by CPC, I think that's a maintenance issue at the golf course. It's not a restoration issue. And I sent that, I said, that's what I thought. We'd have to look further into it. He sent back a question, well, what happens if they leave it down for 2 years and then we put it back up? And I said, interesting. I don't think it'll work.
Yeah, you probably talked to the same council member that I did. Well, actually, there were two involved. I talked to one, but there's a second one that was involved.
Hopefully we gave the same answer.
Yeah, but my question to that is, we funded the fencing at Legion Field for the dugouts and around the playground. That wasn't originally put up with CPC money.
I didn't know that there was fencing there to begin with. It was sold to us as it was needed for safety purposes.
Around the dugouts, but
the dugouts, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to double check because part of the fencing was around the small playground. But maybe there wasn't fencing. Maybe it was a part that more fencing was added. I'll look into that. I'm not.
Maybe we shouldn't look too hard into that. But this case, it's just, in this case, I would have to get further expertise. I don't know if Jen has an opinion as we wind this contract down, but it seems to me that it's repair and maintenance.
Yes. That occurred to me initially as well.
Mm-hmm. That was my first thought, but then, as I said, I was also thinking, comparing it to Legion Field. Jen, do you have anything to add for that? We're going to rack your brain on
That's okay.
the last day with you.
I agree. I think it's just a slippery slope. And I think, thinking about the CPC's goals and objectives and looking back at your plan and what your priorities are. I mean, whether or not it meets that fine line of eligibility or not, I think in terms of how you want to spend your money and what your priorities are should also be a consideration.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you. Okay. And we'll get more of an answer on that too.
And yes, I would think that that's more of a maintenance issue because they're always going to have to maintain the protection of private spaces.
Right. Okay. Any other liaison reports? Harry, anything for Concom?
No, not really.
Okay. Thanks. How about Jean, planning board? I'm just going across the top of my screen here.
Nothing exciting, I guess.
Oh, you guys are always exciting.
Decision.
Anything?
No, I've spoken enough.
Okay. Steve?
Let's give a few updates. What's going on with the Historical Commission? One thing that we have going on is the Bluestone Bank is donating. They had some old images of Bridgewater when it used to be Bridgewater Savings Bank, and they are donating those images to the town to be hung in the Academy building because they were just taking them down off the wall. And what we're doing is the Historical Commission's going through all our photos, and we're trying to find images of old Bridgewater that would be put up through the Academy building. So we're kind of like looking at about potentially around 20 or so images that just be framed and everything. Kind of get some more get the history out there, get a little bit more decoration in the Academy building.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yep. I think just a few. The Hometown Heroes is going back up pretty soon, and all the banners around the town. And one of the images that I requested through with David Moore, who's the organizer of Hometown Heroes and the banners, was getting a banner made for Louis Laguerre Simpson, member of the 54th Regiment in Bridgewater, and who lived in Bridgewater. And so there potentially could be a new banner for him during the Hometown Heroes. And I think the only other thing would be On and June 19th is going to be a Juneteenth event at and it's actually going to be held at Ironworks Park. There'll be the first the first Juneteenth celebration, and I'll be speaking about the history of Bridgewater and during slavery and its reactions with Bridgewater, England. And it should be a good celebration. The music, it'll be Caribbean food, soul food, and it's. I think it's gonna be a great thing that happens. About it.
Mhm.
And when is that happening with the presentation?
June 19th.
Right, and I
June-
believe the rain date is June 20th.
Yes.
It's a Saturday.
I'll make that. I'll definitely
Yep.
be there for that.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
that sounds good.
yep.
You
This will
can
be
get there
the.
in his wheelchair.
I'm sorry.
Kevin can get there in his wheelchair.
I know. I
Yeah.
saw.
We can put him at the top of the hill and push him down.
Ooh,
Hey, isn't
Oh,
this supposed to be
that's
like the
weird.
rules or voice? Like I'm supposed to do that to other people.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can just
yeah.
we'll put some wide tires on it and it'll go down fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be fine. We'll put some floats on it. You can float down the river.
Actually sounds like that actually sounds pretty fun.
It does.
Don't worry, you
Um,
won't go all the way down the river. You'll get stopped by one of those trees.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'll be the guinea pig. It's okay. I can be the big
Oh.
guinea pig.
Okay, how about Steve, anything else?
I guess the only last thing is going to be that I just remembered I am finalizing the review of the town hall redevelopment study turned into a cultural center, and I should be meeting with the town manager hopefully next week to kind of go over what my thoughts. And I know at the next cultural council meeting, the town manager will be meeting on the meeting, discussing it with the cultural council as to what the next steps might be.
I just saw you posted the date. What's the date of that cultural council meeting?
June 1st is the next one.
June 1st, okay.
Yeah.
And when do the next applications open up and need to begin? Do you know?
I think applications they may open up right around July, but I think it goes until October. I'll have to double check that.
I did see the state budget has increased the state cultural council budget substantially.
Yes, and we always are very happy to look for applicants to apply for these grants because we want to give our money out to local cultural events, and I think that a lot of the things that could improve, like the draw to Bridgewater, even the presentation of Bridgewater, would be like, there's a lot of opportunities there.
Yeah, I have an arts idea that I'm putting forward for the OCM, and I don't know what or how possible grant we could get that thing, but
Yeah, no, and if anyone ever has any questions, we're more than happy to discuss.
Mhm. Great, thank you.
Super.
Okay, Bill, do you have for the HDC?
Yes, I've been on the HDC for 30 years, believe it or not. And we've never had a business not to file an application for a certificate of appropriateness for a sign. Well, we have our first one. We have an illegal sign that's been up for 8 months, and the owner of the business categorically refuses to apply for a certificate of appropriateness. So we're pursuing some legal recourses at this point to try to determine what we can do to make sure that this individual complies with Mass General Law 40C, because the historic districts are given authority under Mass General Law. So it's a serious matter, and it'll be interesting to see if the town takes it up. We're getting the town council involved and so forth. So not a pleasant situation.
Okay,
So, Bill-
neat. I don't know
so-
about the others. I had a hard time hearing
Bill, I
Hearing
think
Bill.
what I heard you, what I think I heard you say, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
Is that there's a sign in front of a business that's in the historical commission, the historic district,
Yep.
that did not apply for a certificate of appropriateness, and therefore they need to do that. And it sounded to me like it may have to go to litigation. Is that correct?
Possibly, yes.
Possibly.
We've been working on this for 8 months, and it's
Wow.
and in the 30 years I've been on the commission, we have never had a business that refused to apply for sign certificate of appropriateness.
Wow.
Mm,
So very unfortunate.
Good luck.
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
It's my understanding that other businesses put signs up without ever having a sign permit from the building department. I don't know why we have rules and regulations if people can willy-nilly put up whatever sign they want for a business without applying for a sign permit.
Mhm.
Did you imagine that in, I don't know, Hingham or, I mean, Halifax has very strict sign bylaw.
Right, Duxbury.
Could you imagine that?
Mhm.
Duxbury made Dunkin' Donuts paint their building gray and white.
Yeah, we want the downtown to be as attractive as it possibly can be. Well, all of Bridgewater. So it's an issue of enforcement, unfortunately.
It wouldn't happen to be it wouldn't happen to be an illuminated sign, would it?
No, it's not illuminated. It's not illuminated.
Oh boy, illuminated signs, don't, that they make a big deal about those, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
what
not illuminated.
type of sign is it, Bill?
Illegal.
I don't want to go into too many details.
Okay.
It's,
That's fine.
kind of a plastic. It's a plastic sign. It's not really a sign, actually. It's kind of a membrane.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Okay, who else do we have? Kevin, anything for open space? We kind of talked about open space a bunch before, but anything you want to add?
I mean, just everything that's been already said tonight. I mean, we have our meeting tomorrow, and we're gonna talk more about with the Hanson farm situation, and I mean, for me, it's about letting the Hanson farm, the Hansons take the lead on what they want to do, and that we're just gonna react to that. But we'll address that probably tomorrow, or start the process. And I know we want to start putting up. We're talking about hiring a consultant of some sort to lay out the open space and have more proper postings and mappings of the trails, and so the public can actually go out in a realistic sense and use those ways, use those resources to enjoy the open spaces that we have in town, of course.
Okay, Kevin, what time is your open space meeting tomorrow? 5:30, 4:30?
Just give me 1 minute. I'm going to double check. I want to make sure I'm telling you the right time.
Okay. Okay, could we miss anybody? I think we got everybody for liaison reports. Well, Kevin's looking that up. We'll move on. Kevin, when you get it, just give a yell.
Of course.
New-
Yep.
Okay, new business. We already talked about the joint meeting with the CPC and open space. Other new business, I just have two things real quick. The parking, I was asked this and I think the answer is no, but somebody asked me if CPC can do anything about the hazardous parking at Carver's Pond. And the whole parking situation there. My thought is, no, we can't. That, again, that's a maintenance thing. I don't know if anybody thinks differently.
It's not creating recreation.
Nope,
If
Nope.
it's a handicapped lot, we might be able to do it.
right, and that's what I said too. But I said I didn't believe we could because it's definitely a maintenance thing and they should go to the town for it. The other thing is the Styles and Hart property on Broad Street. There's some old brick walls that go back to the original, I believe, the brick factory.
Yep.
I've walked it a bunch of times in the last few weeks. And every time I go by, it's like, I would love to see something done with those. I was looking today, I just Googled to see if there's any masons that have a historic preservationist background to do something like that, because I thought we might need the historic part of it versus just hiring a mason. And there are a few. There's one guy from Maine, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he does all over New England. Restores brick walls, brick buildings, brick anything brick.
Oh, wow.
Then I saw another one as well. So I think that it's something worth looking into. The town would have to put in the application for it. But I was wondering too, if it's worth looking into to see if there's anything that can be done for the stone building at the Ironworks Park before that goes down completely too. So it's something to keep in mind. Does anybody, Steve or Harry, Harry, you were involved with the Ironworks building. I don't know if you have thoughts on it. I just hate to see these 2 or 3 remaining walls just crumble. There was a brick kiln that I didn't see, but I guess it was actually on the private property and that was just taken down. There's a pile of bricks in the corner, but from what I understand, that was actually private property. So
That's Styles and Hart.
Right. Going in from by the cleaners, if you go
Yep.
in that entrance and you go partway down, you take before you get to the part where you take the left, if you go straight, it's a dead end. If you take a left, you go into the other trails, but it's before that. And it's kind of,
And that got taken down?
the brick kiln is taken down, but the brick walls aren't. They're kind of hidden now by a lot of trees. The trees are starting to fill in.
I know exactly where that is. I hope that wasn't taken down, but
No, the walls aren't. The kiln, as far as what I've been told, the kiln is down, but I'm not really sure where it was before.
They had to apply for a demolition permit.
For the kiln?
I assume so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's they would have to go through the historic commission too, but I'd like to see that.
Okay.
That's unfortunate.
Good morning.
Yeah. Actually, just speaking, this is just a little aside. I happen to be doing some research on Styles and Hart just on my own 2 days ago. And I just wanted to give everyone just like a quick little history that you might not know about it. I was researching on newspapers.com the history of the land, because before it was Styles and Hart, it was the Plymouth County Agricultural Fairgrounds. From 1819 until 1906, the fairgrounds, that's where the fairs were held. They used to have like horse races, bike races. The building that was in there was the largest structure in Plymouth County for a while. And then they moved from there to Halifax for 2 years, and then they went to Grange Park, the Plymouth County fair. It would happen every Labor Day. But no, like the history of that land, like from 1819 until 1907, that was the biggest draw in one of the biggest draws in Plymouth County.
And at one point before it was Styles and Hart, it was the Bridgewater Brick Company.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And you can actually you can go in there and find the bricks
Mm-hmm.
from the Bridgewater Brick Company.
Yep. Yeah.
I didn't
Most of
know
them are Pelton.
I didn't know that the Grange Park was actually the fairground location. I knew that the roadway, the circle there was the size of a racetrack.
Yep. No,
It
they
used to be a racetrack.
in 1913 to at least 1941, the Plymouth County Agricultural Fairgrounds was held at Grange Park. And
Mhm.
in 1941, it was the 122nd running of the fair.
Oh,
It was actually, you accessed it off of South Street, not much further down than the second entrance to South Drive. Because when we were growing up, my aunt and uncle owned the house on the corner of South Drive. And just not that far beyond them, we always used to say in the back was the fairgrounds. I mean, when I was growing up, the fairgrounds obviously wasn't still there. I'm not that old. But we just always referred to it as the fairgrounds back there. And it eventually became Grange Park.
Huh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's good. That's interesting. Okay, next is
Okay.
public comments. Oh, or
On
something
the
else?
Historic Mason, they are
Oh,
very,
yes, Harry, yes.
very
Sorry.
expensive. Been there,
Right.
done that. They gotta send the mortar out to be checked to see what type it is. Then they have to find a specialist to make it. It's very expensive to get a historic mason. I just wanted to make that. That's part of what happened at the Ironworks building.
Okay,
Oh, okay, yep.
but my thought is it's worth looking into to preserve that bit of history. If it's decided that, no, it's way too expensive, then that's one thing. But my thought is to look into it, but that's my personal thought.
Steve,
Yep.
Steve, is that one of the mitigation measures for the removal of the dam and the bridge is in fact to restore that building at the state's expense?
That's the request, and I think that response so far was what we have is that's going to be a difficult mitigation factor because it's not part of the dam. So, but it is a request that we're putting together to see if it.
It's mitigation for removal of a historic property.
Yep.
Well, the stone building is in an historic district. And
Yes.
before it can be removed, somebody has to give permission. And I imagine it's Mass Historic.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
They're involved with the project.
Yeah.
right. It's not that the building would be removed. My concern for that building, and I think probably for most of us, if not all of us, is that it's just gonna collapse.
Yeah.
Then it's just gonna be a pile of rocks.
Demolition by delay.
Demolition by delay. That's a good one.
Demolition by delay.
But it's something to think about. And Harry, I do appreciate that thought, that the expense of it, that I didn't realize that they had to actually send out the mortar to see what it is and all that. That's interesting. Thank you for that info. I appreciate it. Okay, just something to keep at the back of our minds. Public comment. Janet, you're our one public person in Gen 2.
Well, Janet wanted to know what time the open meeting.
Yep, open space. Kevin, did you find that?
Yes, I did. Yep. So tomorrow's meeting is at 4:30 p.m. 4:30 p.m.
Okay.
On Zoom.
Okay, good, thank you. For, I guess, I'm gonna throw it in here. It's not really new business. I don't know what it is. I would, again, like to thank Jen for all her years and years. I'm gonna cry on this, Jen. All her years of service. She was the consultant for CPC when I first got on. I don't know how many years ago. Since I've been chair, I don't know how I could have done it without her or Anna and I just had the other woman's name before Anna on the tip of my tongue, and I can't remember, but without J.M. Golson and particularly Jennifer, I don't think I could have done it, to be perfectly honest. So I just want to publicly thank her for everything she's done. I'll try not to cry with this, but Jen, I can't thank you enough for everything. I wish you well. I hope we have future chances to work together on different projects to hire you, whether it be at the housing or if we have another big project, but you have just been spectacular. I
Thank
can't
you.
say enough good things about you.
Thank you. You know,
Right.
it's been a great relationship. I think I started working in Bridgewater in 2008, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember Marilee and Pete Columbotus contacting me out of the blue saying, would you ever do CPC support? And I said, no, I don't think so. That's not what my business is all about. And then they convinced me to do it. And there was a bit of a gap somewhere in the middle. I can't remember which years when there was a turnover in your town planner. But then I came back and you guys have been a great client, and I do leave with kind of mixed feelings about it. I'll miss you all, but also just know two things. One, you know more than you think you do. You ask me questions, but I think a lot of you already kind of know what I'm going to say a lot of the time. So I would give yourselves more credit than you do, especially, Gina, you've picked up so much. I know there's been a lot to learn. Any new member of a CPC, there's so much to learn, but there's also great resources out there with Stuart Saganor, and gosh, you pay them a lot of money every year too. So I think you should not hesitate to contact them. And I'm also not dropping off the face of the earth. So I'm just a phone call away or a Zoom away. And if there's any way I could be helpful, just let me know.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're going to be missed. That's for sure.
Next meeting
Okay.
is last Wednesday in May, is that right?
Yep, the last Wednesday, well, the fourth for the next meeting is the fourth Wednesday in May,
All right.
which is, and thank you, Steve, for correcting me. Figures I can't remember from 1 minute, whether it's 4:30 or 5:30, but thank you for making that correction.
You're welcome.
Fourth Wednesday in May, 1, 2, 3, is the 26th, May 26th for the next meeting.
Would you want me to send the credentials for the open space committee meeting tomorrow for the link, the Zoom link, if anyone wants that?
I added the link just a minute ago.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, if there's nothing else, no other comments or discussion, we made it under 3 hours. Not much under 3 hours, but I want to thank everybody. I think this was a great meeting. A lot of good information was put out there. A lot of good information was discussed. I learned a lot about cemeteries and things. But I just want to thank the committee members and all the guests that were here for being here. I thought it was a very good meeting. So in light of that, if there's no other discussion, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Steve.
You beat me to it, Steve. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Steve, I'm reading your comment and I'm saying, what is he talking about? But I get it. Okay. Cemeteries, people are dying to get in. Get it.
Don't you say
Okay,
that when you drive by with kids in your car? You know, people are
Yep,
dying to get in
I've
there?
always said that. I've said that, and somebody I used to work with told me that was a terrible thing to say.
I vote
but
yes on adjournment.
Yes. Okay, Josh, roll call.
Gina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved. Meeting adjourned.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thanks.
night.